Hey everybody, Brian Goulet here from Goulet Pens, and today I'm gonna go into deep dive for something that's super important for fountain pen users, how to fill a pen with a piston filling mechanism. Now in this video, I'm gonna demonstrate how to properly operate a piston mechanism and successfully fill a pen from a bottle of ink as well as an ink sample. So what exactly is a piston filling mechanism? Well, it's a type of filling system that uses a retracting plunger inside the pen barrel to draw ink into the pen. Think of it kind of like a syringe that's built right into your pen. Now, it's different from a cartridge converter system where you use a separate cartridge or a little, twist converter, because with a piston filler, the mechanism is an integral part built into the pen itself. However, the mechanics for filling a piston pen and a converter pen are really pretty similar, so it shouldn't be too unfamiliar if you know how to use that. Piston pens usually hold 2 to 3 times the ink than a normal cartridge or converter, so they're a favorite among many fountain pen users who like to write for long sessions without having to fill it quite as often. I know this process can seem a little intimidating at first, but just follow my lead and you'll get the hang of it pretty quick, I think. Here's how you fill a fountain pen with a piston mechanism step by step. Step 1. Prepare your ink and pen. All right, first things first, you want to make sure that you have your bottle of fountain pen ink ready, and then grab the pen that you want to fill. And I recommend placing it and your ink on a surface that you don't mind maybe getting a little inky, especially if you're new to this, just in case any ink kind of drips off in the process. You'll also want to have a soft cloth or a paper towel, something absorbent, handy. That way you can, absorb ink if it happens to get, places you don't want it. Now, if you've used your pen before and it still has the ink in it, you're okay to refill it with that same ink. But if you're changing to a different ink, I strongly recommend that you clean the pen out first before inking up your pen with a new ink. I have another video if you're interested in seeing the cleaning process for a piston filler. You can go check that out if you are not familiar with it. Uncap your pen and locate the filler knob on the back of the body. This is usually at the very end of the barrel, and it's often pretty clear where the knob is because it's a separate piece from the body itself. But some pens can throw you off a little bit, maybe if it has a blind cap that covers the piston knob, or if the knob is flush with the body, similar material and stuff, so that it doesn't look as obvious. But there's a knob there, I promise. Step 2, expel any air or old ink out of the pen. Now you can twist the knob to make the piston inside the pen move up and down, depending which direction that you turn it. The vast majority of fountain pens are going to operate by turning the knob counterclockwise to make the piston go down, which flushes out the pen, whether it's air, ink, or whatever's in there. And if you turn the knob clockwise, that makes the piston go up, filling the pen. Now, before you draw in some new ink into your pen, it's a good idea to expel any air from out of the pen. To do this, you twist the piston knob so the piston goes all the way down towards the grip of the pen. Now do this before you put the pen down into the ink, because if you put it in the ink and then you do that, you could get some air bubbles kind of coming out and popping little bubbles in your ink and can get a little messy, especially if you have a really full bottle of ink. Step 3, submerge the nib into the ink. Slowly submerge the nib of your pen down into your ink. Now you want to make sure the entire nib is going to be covered, and just a little bit of the grip section too. This ensures that the ink makes contact with the filler hole of the pen, which is sort of like the end of a straw where the pen is going to be sucking ink up into the body. Most pens have their filler hole located right where the feed meets the grip of the pen. This can be tricky if your ink level is really low in your bottle, or if it's from a sample, depending on the pen. So make sure that you have enough ink to reach the grip of the pen, and you should be okay. Now, if you're filling from a sample, you may need to tilt the vial as you fill it in order to allow the ink to reach that filler hole. Now, not all piston filling pens are gonna be totally ideal for filling from a sample vial, and there are some hacks that I could get into, but in this video, I'm trying to keep it a little more introductory, so I'll just cover the steps that will work for the majority of piston pens. Step 4, draw the ink into the pen. All right, so here's the key part with this whole thing, right? So slowly turn that filler knob clockwise for most pens so that the piston moves back up towards the knob, and that will draw ink into the pen. Keep on turning until the filler knob makes contact with the pen body and won't turn anymore. No need to tighten it really hard. You can stop as soon as you start to feel some resistance there. You'll likely see about 2/3 or so of the available space and the ink reservoir filled with your ink on your first filling, which is completely normal. Step 5. Fill it completely. This one's a bit more optional. You've already filled the pen, so you don't have to do this, but if you want to get more ink into the pen, I recommend that you repeat this flushing and filling motion that you just did in the last couple steps. Leave that nib submerged down in the ink, expel the ink out of the pen, all the way down by twisting the filler knob counterclockwise again, and then fill it back up by turning the knob clockwise. Now you can repeat this a couple of times and you'll get, at least 10% or so more ink in the pen this way, just by these extra few seconds. Now, I will say most pen manufacturers recommend, after this step, pulling the pen out and letting a couple of drops of ink down out of the pen after you fill it, which can help remove some of the excess ink that's, saturated in the feed from the filling process. This isn't required, but if you don't do this, you could start out writing with a very, very wet pen, which can make your ink darker, more saturated for the first few lines until that ink, kind of works itself through and then it's pulling from the ink reservoir and is writing like normal. Now, if you really want to get it filled completely with no air in there, you can take it a step further, which I don't really recommend that you try until you have some experience filling and cleaning your pen, as this can get a little bit messy, even if you're careful. So I'll show this process at the end of the video if you're interested, but for most people, it's not necessary and you can just move on to this next step. Step number 6, clean off your nib. Once you got your pen filled, gently remove the pen from the ink bottle. Use your soft cloth or your paper towel or whatever to carefully wipe off any excess ink from the nib and from the grip section. You might have a little bit of ink left, especially on the slit of the nib. That's totally normal. That happens. Don't worry about that, but you just don't want your fingers to be, touching the ink. Now, some pens are a little bit easier to wipe off than others, particularly if there's like a really textured grip or a material that like really loves to grab onto the ink, such as like a brushed metal or something, but it's not super hard. Just, take your towel and wipe it off. And there you have it. You've now successfully filled your piston filling fountain pen. Now, it can seem like a lot at first, but once you do it a few times, it's really gonna become second nature to you. Now, bonus, filling the piston all the way. I will say, do this at your own risk, right? I have done this a lot and I still make a mess sometimes. So it's totally up to you. Now, once you've filled your pen, you wanna expel about half the ink back out of the pen. Remove the pen from the ink and flip it up so that the nib is towards the sky. That allows the ink to drop down back towards the piston, and the air will be up near the nib. Now turn the piston knob so that you expel the remaining air out of the pen. You wanna do this slowly because once that air is expelled, you can easily drip ink all over the place, or there can be like little ink air bubbles that kind of come out and can get ink places. So, just be careful there. Once you've expelled the air and you have ink that's, sort of visibly starting to saturate the feed, stop right there, put the pen back into the ink, and then go back to fill it again. Since you've gotten all that air out of there, you'll have only ink left in there and your pen will be like maximally filled out. This is something that's, easier to do with a piston filling pen than most other types of pens, and you can really go a long time without having to refill it again. Now, filling a piston filling fountain pen might seem a little bit intimidating the first few times you do it, but with a little bit of practice, you're gonna get the hang of it in no time. Now, if you have any questions further here, you can feel free to leave them in the comments or reach out to my team over at gouletpens.com. We love to help people out. We have a ton of other YouTube videos here on our channel, so I recommend, checking those out. But in particular, you may be interested to watch through our Fountain Pen 101 series. I cover a lot of different of kind of the basics of using all kinds of fountain pens. And then don't forget to check out our site for all your fountain pen, ink, and paper needs. This is what we do. This is all we do. We love pens. Thank you so much for watching, and right on.